Halloween Day 3. If you're new to my channel and have no idea what Halloween is, it's basically whenever I talk about spooky topics every single day for the whole last week of October leading up to Halloween. And there's already 2 videos available for you to watch right now on my channel, so if you want to check those out, I will link them in my description box. But anyways, let's get back to talking about what we are all here for, and that is to talk about the mysterious death of the Black Dahlia. This case is just disturbing to say the least, so if you are easily grossed out, probably don't want to stay on this video because we are going to be talking about a girl who was murdered and her body was literally chopped in half. So that is your trigger warning. If you don't feel like you can handle it, please exit this video, and I will see you guys tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And for the rest of us, let's go ahead and get into the video and talk about Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29th, 1924 in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, to her parents Cleo Short and Phoebe May Sawyer Short. When Elizabeth was 2 years old, her family moved to Medforth, Massachusetts, and that's where Elizabeth and the rest of her siblings grew up. But whenever Elizabeth was 5 years old, her father Cleo decided that he did not want to be a dad or a husband anymore, so he decided to abandon his family. So in order to leave his family without hurting his children more than what he was already going to, Cleo had to come up with a plan. So Cleo's plan was that he was going to park his car by a bridge and stage it and make it look like he jumped off and himself. So to make everything believable, he had Phoebe drive past the scene with all of the kids in the car and pretend like their dad himself. So she literally had to explain to the kids that their dad had died. I just don't know why we can't say like, Daddy has to go away because he's got to do a work trip or something, and then like he can just never come back. Like, why does it have to be this violent? That's terrible. But the plan worked, and all of their kids believed that their dad actually died, and Cleo was pretty happy with this. So Cleo took all of his stuff and moved to California and started a new life. And Phoebe stayed in Massachusetts and raised all 5 of her kids by herself. And as the years went by, Elizabeth moved on past the trauma of her dad abandoning her. And one thing that kind of helped Elizabeth with the trauma of her father leaving her was movies. Elizabeth became very interested in movies, and by the time she was a teenager, she realized that she wanted to be an actress. But as the kids got older, Phoebe felt really bad for lying to her kids about what had actually happened to their father, and Phoebe decided that it was time that the kids know the truth. Phoebe told her kids the truth, that Cleo was still alive and he abandoned their family. After learning about this, Elizabeth would write letters to her father from time to time, and whenever she turned 18, she moved to California to live with her father in hopes of making it big in Hollywood and becoming an actress. But Elizabeth didn't really spend a long time living with her father because they would argue all the time and it was just really toxic, so eventually Elizabeth decided to move out. After Elizabeth moved out of her dad's house, she really didn't have anywhere else to stay, so she moved around a lot. And while she was on the move, she was living in different states too. But in 1946, Elizabeth moved back to California to visit her ex-boyfriend, Joseph Flicking. But whenever she got to California, she found out that he had actually moved to another state. Elizabeth was planning on staying the night at his house, but since he wasn't home, she had nowhere else to go, so she became homeless. Eventually, Elizabeth got a job as a waitress to help her pay for places to sleep at night and to help her work towards her dream of becoming an actress. So during this time, Elizabeth would stay at hotels and her friends' houses, but she never really stayed anywhere for a long amount of time. And in December of 1946, Elizabeth went to San Diego and stayed down there for a while. But after a couple of days, Elizabeth decided that she wanted to come back to LA and she needed a ride to get back to LA. So on January 8th, 1947, a man named Robert Manley offered to drive Elizabeth back to Los Angeles. But on their way back to Los Angeles, they had to stop and stay the night at a motel. But then the next day, on January 9th, Robert took Elizabeth to the Los Angeles bus station, and then Robert dropped Elizabeth off at the Biltmore Hotel at 6:30 that evening. And that was the last time that Robert would ever see Elizabeth ever again. Because 6 days later, on January 15th, 1947, Elizabeth was found dead at the age of 22 years old. Which is crazy because that's how old I am. Elizabeth's body was found brutally murdered in Los Angeles. And whenever I say brutal, I mean brutal. Like in one of the worst ways possible. Her body was found naked and cut in half. Her face was cut from the edge of her mouth up to her ears, making it look like she was smiling. Her skin was pale white because all of her blood was drained from her body, and her body was wiped completely clean. For respect of Elizabeth, I'm not going to include a picture of her body cut in half. I'm just going to show you guys the one that's covered over with a sheet. If you are curious and you do want to see the pictures of Elizabeth's body cut in half, you can Google the Black Dahlia body and you will find it. But just a warning, it's very disgusting, it's very disturbing. But anyways, Elizabeth's body was found in a vacant lot near Leamark Park. Her body was found on the 3800 block of Los Angeles South Norton Avenue. And her body was found by a woman named Betty Bersinger. Betty stumbled across Elizabeth's body at 10 a.m. whenever she was walking with her 3-year-old daughter. That poor baby. Whenever Betty first saw Elizabeth's body, she thought that it was a thrown-out store mannequin. She thought that because Elizabeth's body was pale white because all of her blood was drained out of her body, and so that made her skin appear really white, and because her body was cut in half, so she thought it was just a broken mannequin. But once Betty got closer and realized that it was a corpse, she ran to a nearby house and called the police right away. And once the police arrived on the scene, they immediately covered Elizabeth's body with the sheet because it was just so disturbing to look at. And shortly after the police got there, they called Elizabeth's dad to see if he can come and identify Elizabeth's body. But Elizabeth's dad refused to come and identify Elizabeth's body. And the police never called Elizabeth's mother to tell her what had happened to Elizabeth. Phoebe actually found out what happened to Elizabeth from a news outlet. One of the news outlets contacted Phoebe, Elizabeth's mother, because they wanted more personal information about Elizabeth. So the news outlet called Elizabeth's mom and was like, "Hey girl, just want to let you know that your daughter won a beauty contest and we just need some information about your daughter for this contest." And of course, Phoebe was so happy for her daughter, so she gave out her information. But at the end of the phone call, the news reporter was like, "Just kidding, your daughter didn't actually win a beauty contest. She was actually murdered and cut in half, and I just needed some information about her for an article that I'm publishing." So of course, Phoebe was freaking out about this, so she left and went straight to Los Angeles. Eventually, the police sent Elizabeth's body off to get an autopsy, and the autopsy revealed that the cause of death was from hemorrhage and lacerations and shock caused by blow to the face and head. So after the police found Elizabeth's body, they did a very long and extensive investigation to figure out who did this to Elizabeth. But to this day, nobody was ever able to figure out who killed Elizabeth. But the very first suspect was Robert Manley, because he was the last person to ever see her alive. But the police actually ruled him out because he passed 2 polygraph tests and had an alibi. And there were other suspects, but the police couldn't link them to the murder. But on January 24th, 1947, someone sent a package to the LA Police Examiner. And the package contained Elizabeth's birth certificate, her social security card, pictures of Elizabeth, and a newspaper clipping about Matt Gordon, and one of Elizabeth's friend's address book that had some of its pages torn out. The package also contained a letter that was made up of newspaper cutouts. The letter said, "Here's Dahlia's belongings and a letter to follow." And all of these items in this package were soaked in gasoline to remove fingerprints. And shortly after this package was sent, someone who calls himself the Black Dahlia Adventurer sent several more letters, but none of the letters had anything attached to it that belonged to Elizabeth. Shortly after the police found Elizabeth's body, word started to go around and the media ran with this story. And because of all the media coverage, this case got a lot of false confessions and a lot of false reports that really hurt the case. The only credible evidence that the police had to work with was what Betty Bersinger saw whenever she stumbled across Elizabeth's body. Betty told the police that she saw a black sedan parked close to where Elizabeth's body was found in the early morning hours. And on January 25th, 1947, the police found more evidence to help with this case because one of Elizabeth's shoes and purse was found in a dumpster several miles away from where her body was found. And Robert Manley, the guy who was the last person to ever see Elizabeth alive, was the person who identified these items as Elizabeth's. So that is all the evidence that the police had to work with. Elizabeth. During that time, the police didn't have any DNA technology or any other technology that we have today, so that really hurt the case. But unfortunately, the police was never able to find the Black Dahlia's killer. But on January 25th, 1947, Elizabeth was buried at the Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, California. But there actually have been some recent developments in this case. There's actually this guy whose name is Steve Hodel, and he actually went to police and told them that he believes that his father, Dr. George Hill Hodel, was the person who murdered Elizabeth Short. And there's actually a little bit of evidence to back this up. In February of 2013, the police conducted an extensive search of Dr. George's home. And during this search, a police dog actually detected the scent of human decomposition, all in the basement. So something had to go on. And investigators also had soil samples taken from Dr. George's yard to have them tested in a lab. And according to Steve, Dr. George's son, there's an alleged recording of Dr. George speaking to an unknown person, and Dr. George allegedly said, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead." But the Black Dahlia murder is one of the oldest cold case files in Los Angeles, and it's one of the city's most famous cases. Dr. George is really the only lead that we have, so I think we should just take it and just run with it. It makes so much sense that the killer would be a doctor, because a doctor would know exactly where to cut the body to cut it in half, and a doctor would know how to drain a body of all of its blood and how to wipe the body perfectly clean. My ignorant self just thought it was some psycho who had a fantasy of cutting people in half. I'm so glad that I'm not a detective, because I would not excel in that field of work. But that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know by subscribing to my channel, or giving this video a thumbs up, or by commenting something down below. But I'm gonna go. I will see you guys tomorrow. I love you guys so much. Stay safe and stay spooky. Bye.